5 of the workshop that we're going to do on attachment. And today I think we want to now start getting into the methodologies for managing attachment. We've set up so much of the background. How many got a chance to do their homework? All right. Let me remind you again and again and again and again and again that the only way to take anything out of here is through homework. There is no other way. There just isn't any other way. You do yourself a disservice when you don't do the homework, because you really remain dependent then upon somebody else giving you knowledge about yourself. You won't have any real authentic knowledge about yourself. So you need to do the homework. And those of you who did that homework, please at the break make sure that I get my measly little hands on it, and then you should set up a time so that we can process it, okay? And get all of the juice that we can out of those activities. So you got to do your homework. But I can understand, we find that it's very difficult to find time for anything that even smacks of spirituality. It is very interesting that that is one of the first problems on the path of any kind of spiritual development, is finding time. We're so bogged down in so many other things, you don't find time. If you can't find time to do a little homework, please be very clear. You will not find time to really follow any kind of spiritual path. So you have to do the homework, okay? You have to do your homework. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the methods for managing attachment. We have used thus far so many different definitions of attachment. Let us revisit some of them. The primary one that I want to have stick in your mind is to begin to understand that this attachment is a clinging. Attachment means clinging to a person, to a situation, or an object, with the intentions of fulfilling your own ambitions. This tendency, this urge to fulfill your own self-fulfillment, your own expectations, is what constitutes the ego. Okay? And this ego then is the basis of all of our personal suffering, with no exception. With no exception. When you suffer, it is because you are contracted. You suffer because you are recoiling. You suffer because you are clinging to your ego. There can be no other basis for suffering. And so we therefore will be talking about ways to reverse this whole process of clinging. Today I have planned on discussing with you some rather radical concepts. So be prepared in some instances here to be shocked. We left off last time, we were beginning to look at karma within the context of your relationships, personal relationships. And so we have to say a little bit about karma. Now, normally we understand karma as meaning action, and it does mean action. Karma means action, but it also means reaction. And it is this kind of part of the karma, your reaction, that has to really be considered on a personal basis. Your reactions, what the Hindus have called your sanskaras, how we react to situations, circumstances, and my position is that these reactions are almost always in terms of fulfilling our ego, with very few exceptions. So we're going to go into a lot of these things today. All right, let us begin now with looking at some of the various methods for managing attachment. And remember, as long as our relationship is characterized by attachment, we will not be able to experience any happiness, nor will we be capable of love. Attachment is the greatest barrier to the phenomena called love. You cannot love that which you are attached to. By definition, you can't love. And that is the whole purpose. We don't really understand this thing called love. Perhaps what we will do toward the end of the last workshop is spend a lot more time on just talking about this thing called love. Because very often we have a very wrong concept, a very narrow concept of what it means to love. We all are aware of the fact that to sustain ourselves, we need all kinds of food, though. We need food for the body. And if you look at the spectrum of our being, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, each of those dimensions of our being require a certain kind of nutrition. And of all of the forms of nutrition that we will have to ingest in order to sustain the phenomena of our existence, the most critical one is that nutrition called love. Love is a kind of food that we must have in order to truly experience human life. It is a form of nutrition, if you will. And it is one of the things that we all need from another human being. Remember, I said on many occasions that everything you want in life, you will have to get from another human being, including life. Not just your physical life, which was given to you through your mother and your father. I'm talking about just the perpetuation and the sustaining of life has to come from another human being, and it has to come in the form of our eliciting from them this energy called love. What is often called the elan vital, vital life. This is a vital life for us. So it's a kind of feeding that we have to do to each other. When we're in a relationship, we have to feed each other. And what is it that we have to feed each other? We have to feed each other this energy called love. And if you do not feed the other individual whom you are in relationship with this essential food, this vital life force, if you don't radiate in the relationship this vital energy, then that person who's in relationship with you starves. That person who is in relationship with you is miserable. And why? Because you are not feeding that person. If you are in a relationship and you are starving, then again, the person that you're in relationship with is not feeding you. Now, what is it then that causes us to refuse to feed this vital energy called love in these relationships? In fact, what is this thing called love? When we look at it in terms of energy, what is it? Have you ever thought about it? Is love just some kind of attitude that we carry subjectively in us? Or is love something far more tangible, far more real, far more solid? Is it just a psychological phenomenon? Or does it have a physics to it? What is this thing? We get some glimpse of what love is when we can see it as our conscious. It's a conscious process, first of all. It's conscious. Directing of tender, heartfelt attention to others. it's a conscious directing of our tenderness and our heartfelt attention to another human being. And you do that, yes, but you only do it occasionally when somebody pleases you. Please make a note. Now, when someone pleases you, for a moment, you come out of your contraction and you allow this energy to radiate from you to that other individual because you are pleased. Your ego is pleased. That person has appeared to have fulfilled one of your expectations. You have to understand the psychology of your expectations and how they dictate your behavior in relationships. So yes, when you are pleased with someone, then no problem. And this vital force, this elan vital, this love, just gushes from you freely. And as it moves from you, what does it do to that other individual? It enlivens them. It enlivens them. If you feed that person whom you're in relationship with, when they have done something that pleases you, then you give them this food. You see? But not otherwise. You see? This straining of the flow and the radiation of your elan vital to the other individual that you're in relationship with, on the condition that they please you, is attachment. It's conditional. Now, if they're giving you something that you want that pleases you, now you allow this energy to flow. And when they don't please you, what do? You contract, you recall, and you hold this energy inside, and the individual bombs. Interesting. It is interesting. The disciplines that we will be talking about, the first discipline for the management of attachment is called the discipline of love. The discipline of loving. The conscious and deliberate attempt and effort on your behalf to radiate this elan vital in your relationship, independent of whether the person that you're in relationship with pleases you or not. This is a real challenge. This is not homework you can do in your head. This is not armchair stuff. This is on the battleground. This is Kuroshita. This is the battlefield. This is what spiritual progress will be. And remember, the highest level of attainment in spirituality confers upon you the ability to love even if you're not being loved in return. Please make a note of that. Please make a note of that. That is the highest spiritual attainment, is to acquire the capacity to love, to radiate the elan vital that is so essential to the survival of another human being, whether you are loved or not. It's very different from what we've been trying to do in our relationship. This discipline of love, what the Hindus have called bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is a conscious imposition upon yourself. It is a vow almost that you take to not contract, not to recall, not to hold back, not to shut down the flowing of this radiant energy called elan vital in your relationship. Yes, Lieutenant.
What you said is easier, simpler. If you find out somebody don't love you, just move on. Why? They don't have any love for you.
Yes, that's what we normally do. But what is moving on? This. Because how do you know you will find anyone that fulfills your expectations? And remember, your elan vital now is subjugated to someone pleasing you. And yet you have a psychology of expectation that may be totally out of whack. You may be looking for individuals who don't exist on this planet. You're looking for a perfect this, a perfect that. If he has this quality, if she has that quality, and if they have all these qualities and they meet my standards and they meet my expectations, then I will flow. The problem is you may never find anyone like that. The second problem, Lieutenant, is this, is that this contracting and this withholding of the flow of the elan vital is what causes your misery. It's your suffering. You have to understand your suffering is not caused by anybody outside of you. Your suffering is generated by your refusal to love. Please make a note of that. Your suffering is the consequence of your refusal to love. And as long as you refuse to love, and as long as you withhold your love, as long as you cling to this state of lovelessness, you will experience misery and suffering. So you must love or perish. You remember, Lieutenant, we said a few workshops back that when we're in these relationships, we have to understand that the aim and objective is to love. That's why you came into a relationship in the first place. And that the loving should never be sacrificed to the personality of the person that you're in relationship with. You stay true to the game called loving. Because what happens when you withhold and contract this? And let's say you hold it so long, now you injure yourself. You begin to lose the capacity to love. Your love remains shallow because it is not in use all the time. You don't use it enough. It don't grow. It remains superficial because there's no depth to it now. It is what Prince Pearls called chicken shit. We relate at different levels. Sometimes in our relationship, these are chicken shit relationships, just chicken shit. Nothing is going on in them. Everything is superficial, pseudo, false nonsense. A little deeper is bullshit. Bullshit is now when we are exchanging our importance to each other. You understand? You think I'm important, I'll think you're important. We got a deal? Okay. Now, we're involved in each other's bullshit. And then there's elephant shit. All right? These unfortunate situations and levels of our relationships exist because we give up the idea, what we call the islah, the highest idea of what the relationship should be based on. So it is our refusal to radiate, to demonstrate this elan vital, this love, this conscious directing of this tenderness and this heartfeltness in the form of our attention to another human being. It is the withholding of this action that is the basis of all of our misery and what characterizes the relationship of attachment. We'll work with this some more because it's essential to understand what our aims are, what our ideals are, so that we can continuously try to bring ourselves up to that level. So one of the disciplines we'll be talking about for the management of attachment is this discipline of love called yoga. The other methodology that we will be talking about for the management of our attachments and our relationships, so that this state of attachment can be replaced with a state of love, is what in the East has been called karma yoga. Karma yoga. Karma yoga is basically the conscious and deliberate effort to detach the tentacles of your own selfishness from your actions. It is to detach selfishness from will. To have the will to act without the desire to control the results of those actions. It is the conscious giving up of the fruits of your actions. It is to interrupt this clinging process, this control process that we all have, where we try to control the outcome of situations and circumstances. And what are we doing when we're trying to control the outcome of situations and circumstances? We're trying to bring those situations and circumstances into a form where they please us. Again, we're back to pleasing. When we can manipulate circumstances and situations in such a way that they are now pleasing, then what happens? Then this elan vital can flow. It can flow. But if you can't manipulate the situation, the circumstance, the person, to the extent that they now are pleasing, what happens? It shuts down the flow of the love. And who is injured in the process? I want you to understand, when you withdraw your love, it is not so much the damage that you do to the individual. There is too a lot of damage. But the most damage you do is to yourself. To love is an act that you do in your own behalf. Please make a note of that, because you've been thinking entirely wrong. You got this thing exactly upside down. When you love, that is an act that you do in your own behalf. It's for you. It benefits you. So Karma Yoga then becomes one of the second methodologies that we will be talking about for the management of this attachment, the transcending of this egotism that keeps us in these kinds of relationships of exploitation, where we really never have the experience of the free flow of elan vital between ourselves and the other person. And that is what makes the situation true. When we both are feeding each other. We both are feeding each other. So Karma Yoga then is training of the will in such a way that you are able to detach yourself from the outcome. Now, these are not easy yogas. These are not easy techniques. I grant you that. You see, they will require 100% of your effort. You're not going to be able to do this in your head at all. But there is something you can do in your head. We have a method for that, because some people work in their head better, quite frankly. So these mystics have designed techniques for everybody, irrespective of our orientation. The third methodology is called jhana. I don't even know if that's spelled right. It's spelled so many ways. Dhyan is also another version. Jnana Yoga, Jnana Yoga, knowledge. Knowledge. This method is focused in on self-analysis. And introspection. It is the activity where now you are really beginning to try to see your real self, to see your higher self. It is developing the capacity to make a distinction between your social presentation of yourself. The homework that I assigned involved you really getting a glimpse of the self that you present socially, isn't it? That's your social self. And you present that in all of your relationships. Nothing wrong with it, but that's not who you are. And as you cling to that false image of yourself, you see, then you create all kinds of problems for you as well as anybody else that come in contact with you. Jnana Yoga is developing the intellectual, the mental abilities to shift your identity from your lower self to your higher self. It is a great yoga. It is a great yoga. It requires maximum intelligence, maximum honesty, the ability to see clear. Many perish on this path because they can't see clearly. They can't think. Do you realize how few people can really think? Thinking is a great art. Thinking is difficult. Most of us can't think. You cannot follow a course of thought for more than a fleeting second because your mind is running. Your mind is wavering. Every nanosecond your mind wavers. You cannot follow a line of thinking. You cannot follow a line of thought to all of its logical and rational conclusion. You can't do it. You don't know how to think. Your mind is not pure enough to think. To think requires a certain degree of purity of mind. But it is possible through arduous effort and training, one can learn how to think. And then when one learns how to think, then one is fit now to use this method that is called Yadilok. The fourth is Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga. This is the path of meditation. This is the path of meditation. This is the path where you are now able to, through this process of meditation, actually discover the contents of your unconscious mind. To not only discover the contents of your unconscious mind, but to also be able to purify those contents. So that whatever bubbles up into the conscious mind for acting upon is always clean. Good. And clean of what? Purified of all this egotism. You see? Of all the wrong attitudes, beliefs, values that we function out of on the conscious level. And so these then are the four major methods that has come down from antiquity for the management of attachment in our relationships. So let us return to the first one and let's explore it to some degree. I mentioned to you last time that we're all in a situation where we're in relationships with other human beings. We all are a part of a family. Either we have siblings, brothers, sisters, etc., etc., etc. But you are already in a context, aren't you? Right? And you're in that context because of your karma, in the sense of the consequences of your previous actions. We all have to undergo the consequences of our previous action. This is a law. You can't violate this law. The question is, how will you react to it? It's the second part of the phenomenon of karma, right? How do you react to it? So you're in a situation already because of your karma with individuals who have been customized to challenge you to develop spiritually. Please make a note of that. Every individual in your life that you've had a relationship with, and every individual in your life that you will have a future relationship with, has been customized in order to challenge you in the development, in the practice of this discipline of love, with no exception. However fleeting the relationship may have been. So you have to begin to see these things very differently. So you already have the material to practice these methodologies on in the form of your existing life that was perfectly designed for you. It could not have been better. All of the opportunities are there. Now, therefore, these disciplines are first to be practiced within the context of your existing relationships, within the context of your existing relationship with that man, that woman, that child, that friend that you are presently in relationship with. Right now, perfect situation to begin your sadhana, your practice, your spiritual living. And how do we practice this discipline of love in our personal relationships? I mean, really, what are you doing in terms of the practicing of bhakti yoga, this discipline of love, in your present relationship? Consider that. What do you do? How do you behave in that relationship? Have you considered? What is the dynamics of the psychology that is dictating how you are interrelating with the human beings that you're in relationship with now? What is going on with respect to this discipline of love? this floor again. Are you feeding the person that you're in relationship with? These are not rhetorical questions. I expect some answers. Yes. Okay, Baba, come on with it, Baba. We're not here to play this morning, huh? No.
In our personal relationships, I think that we're just totally responding. We're not even living. It's in the sense that whatever they do, then we respond, and that's how the whole relationship is. We're letting their actions dictate how we react.
Okay. Beautiful. This is called a state of reactivity. We are in really a state of reactivity. They do something, and then we do something. And then when we do that thing, then they do something else. You ever seen little children on playgrounds getting the last tag? That's what it looks like to me from where I stand. You know, I hit you. Ooh, I'm going to get you back this year, run across the playground, hit me, then I run across the playground, and we'll carry this hitting each other back and forth all the way up until we're in the grave. It's kid stuff. That's child stuff. That stuff belongs on playground. It's appropriate when you're 4 or 5 years old. It's totally inappropriate in adult context. But Baba is right. We live on a level of pure reactivity. And what is it that is reacting in these situations? It is our egos. Pure and simple. Egos. It is our egos. The struggle is, I am trying to make this person please me, and that person is trying to make me please them. And neither one of us is pleasing each other. And so then that revenge starts, that urge to get even. What else besides just this reactivity? Baba, that's such a comprehensive term. It really covers a lot of things. Let's break it down. Let's look on the inside of it. Let's look in these relationships, our relationships included, because are we any exception? Are we all in here saved and we're an exception? Of course not. Of course not. We all have had problems in our relationships. And the ideal is to sit here honestly and openly and let's look at the basis of these problems and see what is going on so that we can, some way, shape, form, or fashion, break this pattern. Because it forms a pattern, doesn't it, Bob? Lieutenant, you asked earlier, this pattern, what are we not experiencing love in this relationship, then we move on to the next one, but then you have not changed. It will be the same mess. The same nonsense will be repeated again. What else is going on in our personal relationships with respect to this conscious effort that we have to make to demonstrate love? Do you really love? Are you in love? Are you in love? Are you really in love? In these relationships? Are you really loving? Oh, I wish you could see your faces here. Oh, I wish you could see your faces. Yes,
I
Tony.
want to say that, a couple of weeks ago we spoke, and you brought out a point to me. I'm in a relationship, and my silence, I thought, was showing compassion, and actually, it wasn't showing compassion at all. And that little experience had helped me because we sometimes don't like to say how we feel, because we feel, well, if I say this, how the other person's going to react. And I think a lot of times in relationships, that's just such a cruel thing to do to another individual, because I don't want to say this because it may make you feel bad, but by me not saying it, I'm carrying an attitude about it. And ever since you brought that, pointed out to me, I found that it really helped me, because a lot of times in how you present an individual, they're already aware of it.
Sure.
Yeah, I know I got that problem, so
Yes,
now you know.
Now you know.
Whereas instead of trying to hide it, I felt that, I mean, it was a simple experience to do, but I didn't want to do it, because I kept thinking, well, I don't want to hurt this person. I had no right to hurt this person. And actually, I was hurting myself, because my silence was eating me up.
Your silence was a tool. Your silence was a way of dramatizing your restraining of the flow. See? wasn't flowing. See, what I want you to look for, I want you to feel for this, and this is a little different perhaps for you, because I'm sure that for many of you, it is a new way of looking at relationship. But I want you to reflect in your mind and look in your memory, assess how you are functioning in your relationship, and see to what extent you are really contracted. See to what extent you have really recoiled in that relationship. See to what extent you are really holding in your love. I want you to really see that. I want you to get in touch with that. Tony says that she does it sometimes. She holds it in and disguises it as an act in the other person's behalf. I'm holding back the flow of my elan vital, and I'm not going to feed you this love. I'm not going to give you this tender, heartfelt feeling in the form of my attention to you for your own benefit. This is madness. How could the withholding of this tenderness, this love, possibly be beneficial for the other human that you're in relationship? Yes, sister.
More than worried about the other person, I've been worried about myself, so I keep a scorecard. And so you give, and I'll give.
Yes.
And then you give again, I'll give again. But I'm waiting for that payoff before I give it out.
Yes.
I'm not going to make a phone call unless you've made a phone call.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That is restricted. That is recall. That is holy. That is the tendency to be transcendent, so that you will continuously flow. You continuously flow. You see, so that there's no interruption. It requires great spiritual maturity. You see, this can't be done on a lark, but it is the direction that you want to go into, because that is the context of human relationships, love. That is the whole function of down here. That's what this is all about. This whole thing is about loving, developing the capacity to love perfection continuously, where there is no interruption in the flow, because that is the stuff that life is made out of. We all know that if a child is deprived of the flow of this tenderness in the form of another human's attention, even though that child is fed, clothed, and turned over, the child dies. The child fails to strive. It is no different in an adult relationship. When you have been starved of this thing, you see, then something in you died. And that inner death feels like depression, dissatisfaction. You are unhappy. You are miserable. Yes, because you're not receiving any of the elan vital in your relationships. And why aren't you receiving any? Because you're putting on out. Yes, brother.
I think in the West over here, we kind of go into relationships in a weird way, because, like she was just saying, she be keeping a scorecard, right? Now, are we talking about relationships or marriages? Because usually a woman, if she feel like she's gonna marry a man, she'll open up a little more. But if they just in, I know a lot of women that's in relationships that know in their mind that they're not going to even marry a guy. And they be with this fella 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I just don't understand that. I wouldn't waste that much time with a woman if I didn't plan on marrying her. Marrying her. But that's weird. I mean, you in a relationship with somebody, you have no kind of intentions on marrying them. But that's the way we are over in the West.
Yes, that's part of the problem. But
it's weird.
It is very strange. But the dynamics, Rob, as you pointed out, is that the only point in being in the relationship, and marriage is another form of relationship. That's all. It falls under that same category.
But yet you can't get through them unless you say, okay, I'm gonna marry you. I mean, they're not gonna open up.
Why is that? Because they're not going to let that energy flow unless they're pleased. It pleases them when you get that. It pleases them when you make a commitment. It pleases them when you take a vow. You understand? It pleases them when they know that you're there for real. It's not a Saturday night thing, and it opens up. They come out of that contraction. You see my point? We all have these subtle things, and one of the things you have to see is that we have to get a great deal of understanding about ourselves, you see. Because the more we understand ourselves, the more we automatically understand other human beings, automatically. And we have to look and see what are the restrictions that we impose upon the flow of our own love in our relationships, you see. That is the first starting point. And then you never know. Even after you're married, that doesn't mean guarantee that the love will continue to flow, because it's out of the same old psychology, right? The root, the paradigm that informs how you behave in the relationship has been formulated somewhere back in your childhood, consisting of all kind of wrong notions, wrong attitude, and what is worse, a whole outrageous set of expectations from other people, from yourself, and the world. And all of this has to be revisited. All of it. I don't know which one to go. Go. Just go.
It's kind of strange because it's almost like love and commitment. Well, it's like commitment can be, it's a thin line between it, because a lot of people kind of depend on their relationship lasting, like you say, on how you make them feel, you know, from the love. But I don't think you can do it. It's almost like you just gotta have concentration. If you hook up with somebody, it's like a battle. I mean, you gotta understand that love gonna be like a battleground. It's gonna be like a fight. You know what I mean? And you, I mean, you can't really. I mean, it's got to be that kind of understanding that whatever go down, you just gonna be there. I mean, the love got to be developed through the battleground. It seems like to me.
Sometimes it depends on each individual.
I mean, without the ups and downs, I just don't see how you can even develop love, honestly.
All right, we're talking about the friction, and we'll come back to that too, because you're right. There has to be some friction. Energy comes from friction, though.
Yeah, because I feel like when two people meet and they first get together, I mean, that's almost like infatuation.
But why is the friction there and conflict? Like you said, Rob, because it is infatuation. The two people have not met. What is met is the images that each have respectively presented. What has met is the social presentations that they made of themselves out in the nightclub, which was not real in the first place. Neither mine is real, and please make a note. Mine is not real. Yours was not real. It was bullshit to begin with. That's the truth. And now you got to work yourself through this chicken shit, bullshit, elephant shit. And that's arduous. And you can't do that if you cling into this thing. What is it, Rob, that makes relationships difficult? It's this. It is this thing. This is the only culprit. There is no other culprit. This is it. And so we have to, through a process of spiritual discipline, transcend these illusions that we have brought into these relationships. And you're right. Because now in this relationship, the woman has got to release her grip on her image that she concocted and presented to you in that nightclub. And you too have got to release your grip on it. And neither one wants to let go because you don't know who you are. You think that you really giving up who I am. I got to stop being who I am. You were never that in the first place. So you are clinging to an identity. You are clinging to an image of yourself that is false. And this clinging turns into banging in these relationships. And even once you get past that, now you're going to have to go to the deep stuff, the ego contents, ego mythology. Now that's deep, and that's hard to deal with. But before we come in further, Sethrai, you had a comment, and this sister had a comment, and let us put that out here too, because I'm sure it's going to help us all.
Rob gets so deep.
He gets deep. But the brother been he's been deep in it.
No, but one of the things in which that I thought of was the self-gratification in which that we all have in relationships.
Yes.
Because to be perfectly honest, when we start off with relationship, we're making a checklist.
Mm-hmm.
This woman make a lot of money. She's got a nice set of boobs. And the truth of the matter is that we're just going into this love thing out of our own idea of not trying to be lonely, to find companionship initially.
Mm-hmm.
And this pure love, the love in which that you talked about, the bhakti love, That type of love, who knows about that?
That's
I mean,
true. That's
I
right.
mean, we're human beings, and again, I'm just speaking personally because, again, I know my motives were selfish in terms of the relationship in which that I have with my wife, not only my wife, but people around me, you
Mhm.
know, and I began to question and challenge my
Yes.
ulterior motive behind that.
Well,
But
you pointed out something very profound, so that you all don't miss what Sethra is saying here. He's saying that even before we get into the psychology of our expectations, you know, your expectation that you personally have, coalesce into a kind of personal psychology that is reflected in the way you interact with other human beings. But even before the formation of your psychology that is composed of these expectations, even before that occurred, Sethra says something more fundamental is there. And now he comes to a definition of egotism that is used by the various mystics and sages that at first sounds odd to us. And they say fundamentally ego is a sense of separateness. It's a sense of separation. Basically. And that sense of separation now, right, creates in itself a kind of undercurrent of suffering. The suffering of being alone, isolated, disconnected, separate from the universe. Right? The loss of the conscious experience of God's love for you. Separation from your oneness with the Creator. Now you're separate. Isolated. Now fear comes in. And then that whole process begins to take place. Because of that. When that child, when we're children and we're born into this world, we were disconnected from an experience from it. Right? And we start discovering that, my God, I can't always, you know, I got to actually manipulate, control, do something to get people to do things for me. It's just not happening no more. You see? This separation is the root of this thing. And this is the thing that we all begin to move out of. More about that later, Sethra, because when we go deep into Raja Yoga, the yoga of meditation and things of that nature, one of the aims is to restore this union. That's in fact what yoga means. Yoga means to reunite. It has the same meaning as religion from the Redigere, the Latin, that means to reconnect. And reconnect to what? This experience of being connected to the divine. When you really think about it, it's very few of us really feels the love of the world for us. You really don't feel that the world loves you. Not technically. Deep down inside. You really don't feel that God cares anything about you. Yes, intellectually you say that. When you're in churches, you know, or in a religious posture. But deep down inside, at the level of your heart, you really don't feel it. Not only do God not care anything about me, the world don't give a damn about me. And you feel that. You feel that. Right? And whenever this feeling that the world, that God, that the cosmos does not care about you, fill you up, that is a lot of pain. That is a lot of suffering. And that is what gives rise to all this anger and all these other things. You see? It's a painful situation to be in. Because we have separated ourselves, but only in our mind. Because in reality, you can never be disconnected from that which exists. It's not possible. There's a kind of ecology that mandates that you stay connected. But in our mind, we have the illusion that we're disconnected. This experience in our mind of being disconnected from that which exists is the foundation of ego. And all of the problems that we've been talking about spring from this. So, Sethra, you've introduced a very deep thing. Baba, you had a comment.
Yeah, being a person with a real ego and know it. Now, but I just want to say this. I think that, most people don't really realize how big and powerful this ego is.
Yes.
because we were talking about the personal relationships, and here's what brought me to a little bit of honesty about myself. You find yourself, and I think everybody can really relate to this, because almost everybody in here has had more than one relationship. But never, I think, do we ever question, okay, I had this relationship, for whatever reason it ended, and this one, and for whatever reason this ended, and so on. And then finally, we get to this, we're in another relationship, and it's not working either. We always say, I always call it, they fooled me. Yeah. See, it's it's this, when I heard Rob was talking, it's not just people waiting until you get married before they give it all. Sometimes they give it all before you get married, and then they stop. What happened is what happened is that you're fooled. I mean, everybody's nice, initially, and then when you get to a certain point in that relationship, now you begin to see that this person isn't fulfilling these things you expected them to fulfill, and now you're saying, "Whoa, I'm stopping this love that was kind of flowing here because they fooled me. This isn't the person." But never do we realize, well, that person's thinking the same thing about you.
Exactly.
You fooled them. And so we go on and we have this thing in our mind, well, this person didn't work. And I think that we end up in relationships quite often, going into relationships, never looking at the fact that, hey, there was something here with me too. We always was looking at the fact that,
always out.
yeah,
Right.
there was something, that person fooled me, that person fooled me.
Yeah.
And then we get in a relationship, and I think earlier you were talking about, all of these situations are geared to help you spiritually get to the point of being able to love. We can never do that because we have this idea. I don't care, we could have been married for 20 years, I guess. I haven't been that. But somewhere in our mind, we say, well, this person fooled me. I can step out of here anytime I want to. We never really look at it as something permanent, therefore looking at the possibility of what we're going to do about it and actually try and come deal with it. And then put some of the focus some of the attention on us trying to change. Because I think that we still have it in our mind, just like we had those relationships in the past. Some kind of way, something can happen. I can step out of here. There's somebody more wonderful out there for me, and we never look at it and say, "Hey, I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna transcend this relationship. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna change, and therefore this relationship is going to work." It never gets to that point. It's rarely get to that point.
It rarely get to the point. Though it started out, the tradition, the intention was to make it that way. We called it the vows.
Right.
The vows that we took for better, for worse. Again, it was trying to create in the participants a certain awareness, a certain level, a certain transcendence of good and bad. That you're in a relationship and you're there now, and it's no longer based on whether things are going good or things are going bad. I'm here, whether good or bad. It was to try to create it. If you could make that vow heartfelt, from your heart. Marriage is a relationship of hearts. It's not legal. It's heart. Put it in the legal context for practical purposes, but essentially it's of the heart. For better or for worse, in sickness and in health, look at all of the dualities, all the polarity that's going on here. And until death do us part. Until death. Not until I get tired, not until I get frustrated too much, until death, which means you're playing whole out 100%, because there is no other way to play the game and win. Now please understand me clearly here, because a lot of us are not clear on this. Unless you play this game of love 100%, you do not win. You do not get a taste of what these mystics intended to be tasted in these experiences. You don't get it, just as Baba said, because you're withholding. You see, you're in the attachment. Now, when you are in attachment with a person, then it's just as you described. I'm in attachment, meaning that my whole purpose in existing here is to somehow manipulate you, control you in such a way that you please me. And if you don't please me, then I am entitled to get out of this relationship. That's attachment. That's all that is about. And I'm going to stay in this relationship with you as long as you're pleasing me. If you can please me, 95% of the time for 30 years, I'm going to stay with you for 30 years. But even if I stay for you 30, you can stay in a state of attachment for 30 years. Why not? They do it all the time, you see. But that's not the real state, is it? Right? It's exploiting you. It's exploiting each other. That's attachment. That's attachment. But you're right, Baba. If you can play this thing 100%, for better or for worse, sickness and health, cherish, love, obey, and cherish. Look at those words. To love, obey, and cherish. Each of them requires you to deal with this. You can't do any of that unless you deal with this. You're not going to obey. How can you obey your wife? You thought if the vow means she obeyed me. You never thought, holy cow, that means I obey her too? It never dawned on us. And how can we obey? Because all of us think we're right. That's one of the characteristics of ego. You know that thing in you that makes you feel you right all the time? Even when you say you wrong, you secretly believe you right. You see? You can't get away from it. That's how ego is. Right? I might say I'm wrong for purposes of appearing humble. That's a great social presentation. Right? But deep down inside, I don't think I'm wrong. And how do I know that? Look at my life. You won't see any change, no transformation. Period. It's all. You'll see the same old bullshit. So, these words that make up the vow, and the words are similar across cultures, across time. It doesn't matter, you know. All are trying to get the participants to rise to a certain state.
Even in a polygamous society?
Even in a polygamous society. In a polygamous society, most of these polygamous society came about for practical purposes. In ancient times, men fought wars and they were killed in large numbers just like now, right? And when society was more based on small communities, you see, then you had to have different kinds of relationships going on. If there's a smaller community and there's no cities and urban situations yet, you can't have all these women out here with no men and no fathers, you know, so polygamy sprang into being. And it was never so much associated with promiscuousness. In the West, we associate polygamy with promiscuousness. And they're very different things, you see. But even in those relationships, the vow was the same. You know, for better, for worse, in sickness and health. And until death do us part. Now that's powerful. Now, when you can move into a relationship like that, then you can do this discipline of love. Then you can do this bhakti yoga. Because the highest spiritual practice is being in a relationship, loving, radiating, demonstrating your love, even if you're not receiving it. That's tight. That's tight. That's very tight, isn't it? Yes, sister.
I mean, what do you think? You stay in a relationship and love the person and they're not loving you at all?
What I'm saying that the whole aim and objective of the practice of the discipline of love that I am referring to as bhakti yoga is an act in our own behalf, because our objective is to never interrupt the flow and the radiation of our love, our elan bhakti.
But if a person has no love for you,
Yes.
then I mean, I'm not saying
Yes.
that you should say, oh, I hate you, and, you know, I'm going to
Yes.
attempt to destroy you or something.
Yes.
You should, but I think, don't you think that it makes sense to say, well, while I love you and I think you're a great person, I need to move into a more positive environment?
That's what Lieutenant was suggesting, that you might want to do that. And I suppose it depends on what level you at. If I'm in a relationship fundamentally so that I can get something, then that makes sense. Because that's why I was in a relationship in the first place. I was never in a relationship just to give. It was business. It was a transaction. The understanding was that I make you feel good, you make me feel good, and we got a deal, right? You see?
No,
but if you don't keep...
a negative situation if someone's...
Yes, it's negative for a person who's moving out of the ego, whose whole agenda is based on attachment. Because, again, understand what it is. Attachment is to be in a relationship, to cling to that relationship with the expectations, with the expectation of being fulfilled. That other person pleases you. That's why you're in a relationship.
But it sounds like you could be in a relationship with anybody then.
Sure, you are. That's the whole point. That's the whole point I'm telling you, is that it ain't about personalities. You've been thinking relationships is about personality. It's not about personalities. It's spiritual. Yes, brother. I know this is radical. So come on, I mean, let's get it all out today. This is a radical.
The good thing about the Creator is he lets the whole world know that there is such a thing as a universal truth that's not in books and that everybody can see. So if you are in a relationship and you with somebody that's acting a damn fool, there is a point that you shouldn't go beyond with. I feel.
Now, I'm not saying that you allow yourself to be harmed. Please don't misunderstand me.
I think that's what she.
Yes, you don't allow yourself to be harmed. What I'm simply saying is that you don't want to ever shut down
Right, yeah.
and lose your capacity to
Your
love
equanimity. I know
for no person.
Right.
Doesn't mean you stand there and get your head beat, and that's not loving. That's a wrong concept of love.
She'll put your light
No,
out.
because sometimes, sure. But listen to me. That's right, Rob. Sometimes out of this loving, you discipline.
Right.
Sometimes out of this love, you get angry. You throw a fit. Yes. But at no time, you see, have you violated the deeper relationship. You see, you do what has to be done. You react. You see, this is not some kind of imaginary situation. You see, you have children. Sometimes you whoop their butt. Doesn't mean you don't love. That underlying thing is there. It ain't going nowhere. There's no abandonment. What you were saying is that the moment I feel that this person is not really pleasing me anymore.
Well, you don't want to, I'm not saying the moment. But
The moment. Well, 2 weeks later, right? Once my patience has been exhausted and I can't take no more of this lovelessness, because that's what you're experiencing. That's how you process it in your mind. This person is not loving. This person don't love you. And now, what do that mean when you say somebody don't love you? Really, what are you talking about? Let's look into it. What do you mean when you say somebody's not loving you? Precisely, what is it that you're talking about? Right. Is it anything else? Please, now just don't agree with me on the spur of the moment. Think about it.
They're not doing what I tell them.
But could it mean, yes, Khadija? Oh, well, that's another issue, right? That's
But
another
I think
issue.
sometimes you can start to see it, but you don't want to say that. You
That's
have to
right.
Start to perceive that.
That's right. You don't want to be perceived. So sometimes it's a hiding. But normally when we go about and we say, or even if we don't say it, it's because most of us don't even say it publicly to the other person. We keep it inside. But they're feeling it. Damn, this man don't really love me. Damn, this woman don't really love me.
But shouldn't you still be able to know? Because what if you couldn't talk? How would that love be expressed then?
Well, first thing we got to get a clear focus on, Rob, is what do you mean when you say somebody don't love you no more?
I always felt like this. A woman ain't never got to tell me she loved me. I can feel the vibes from the actions that she send toward me. You don't have to tell me you love me, because you can say you love me and then doing everything in the book and in action that demonstrates you don't love me. And then you can say you don't love me and then be doing everything
So you know what you're
there
feeling.
is to show me that.
Sure, I agree. What I'm asking you to do now is to consider those feelings as source. Consider the psychological origin of the feeling. Consider that feeling. And what is that feeling based on? How do you decide in your feelings that another person don't love you? What is that based on?
Don't love you?
Yes, that's the question.
If she going out every Saturday night.
right? And so that's what we'll get. We'll get a list. What we will do is that we will get a list.
She don't love me. If she do, I don't want that kind of love.
That's right. We'll get a list of all of the violations of our expectations. Right?
There is a universal truth.
You see, everything that we will put on that list will be basically the person's violating one or more of our expectations that dictated our being in the relationship in the first place. Yes, sister.
Excuse me, because I came in very late. But
Yes.
I want to say that I think that those expectations are constantly changing, and we're not honest about that.
That's true too. That is
And
true
then
too.
when the person suddenly violates an expectation, it may not have been even in the legal code.
It may not have even been a part of the deal.
Because when you hear brothers talk about food on table, houses, and cleaning,
That's here, yes.
those weren't violations in the initial relationship.
Yes.
They never looked at a woman and said, I think she's really good with the broom. You know, they were looking at other expectations, and then as the relationship
Yes.
evolved,
Sure.
well, I'll say most men. I would say
I have
most
to jump
men.
in there because it could go both ways. That just don't have nothing to do with the woman.
No, I'm not saying
cooking
that
the
just the
food.
woman,
talking
I'm
about-
saying the woman does that too. The
Yes.
women many times
Sure.
do not talk about
Sure.
the economic
Sure.
expectations
Sure.
that they have later.
Sure.
Everybody talks about how you feel and those types of things, but later on it's like, well, you're not making enough money, well, you're not cleaning.
Yes.
So that's why I'm
Because
saying
it's a dynamic
changing.
phenomenon. It's
Yes,
not
it's
static.
changing.
It is
It's
constantly
changing.
moving, as it must constantly move, isn't it? And very often, we're not even aware. The other person is not. How can they be aware? We don't even know what's going on. But before we take break, the thing I want you to really consider here, I want you to really consider, no matter how you rationalize it, and all we're trying to do is rationalize and justify our expectations that we hold for other people. That's all. As if you know how another person should be. As if you know that which is best. Look at the arrogance of that. Look at the arrogance of that. Right? This is how you should be. Because that's essentially what you're saying. You shoulding all over this person. Right? You're shooting on that person. And it's deep. It's hard. Please understand me. Please understand me. This level of self-analysis is difficult. This is hard. Because you're going to have to be wrong. And I already told you, your ego won't let you be wrong. None of our egos will let us be wrong. That's the nature of the ego.
But just like Bhagwan, we have
Yes, I'm gonna let these. We're gonna get ready for our break, but I'm gonna let these people in here work with you on break on that one. But let me just go ahead, Rob. We'll take a last comment.
Just like you have to nurture your life force in your body.
Yes.
Through breathing and meditation and
Yes.
things like that. It's a certain way you have to handle a relationship to nurture that love too. If you want that love to be vibrant. I mean, you just can't, I think, be in a relationship with a person and think that you can do things that's not principle as far as, you know, I mean, that's
Yes,
not.
the question is though, Rob, who decides what's principle and not?
Well, like I said, you're both human beings. You both know what's right and wrong.
That's
I
a lot.
mean,
This you do, but you each have a different definition of right. You even have a different definition of what is wrong.
but when you're married in a relationship,
That doesn't change anything.
Unity.
Listen to me,
I mean,
listen
if
to
you're
me,
not doing
listen to
things
me.
that's gonna
If
create
person
unity.
A is ignorant before marriage, and person B is ignorant before marriage, because person A and B get married does not make both of them brilliant suddenly. If you were ignorant and misinformed and had a lot of wrong conclusions about life prior to getting married, that stuff just walks right into the marriage. In fact, Rob, that is why the thing is difficult. You have to understand, if they had principles, they would have no difficulties. Truly. The fact of the matter, they got this conflict is proof that they don't have this stuff. That's ego mythology. You've been thinking you had all this stuff. And then you get in a marriage, you suddenly find out, I ain't got nothing, but you can't handle that. So you got to find something wrong with this person. As Barbara pointed out. But the reality, Rob, is there's something wrong with all of us.
of course, I mean, that's
Now,
that's
the thing is that we have to focus on us. Because about yourself, you can do something. Now, what can you do about this person? Now, really, consider it. I'm only asking you to consider it. I'm not asking you to accept it, but I'm asking you to take your highest intelligence. Don't get emotional about it, and simply consider it and see with your own eyes whether this is the case. See whether that's the way life is. I don't know something. And until you see it, don't go away from your own fixations. Don't move from that. Live and see. Because it has to be your own conviction. Don't be persuaded. You see, don't move from that. But do consider it, do see. And then go with your own experience. And see if that approach that you've been using, has it worked? That's the bottom line. Has that attitude worked? Look at your relationship. Look in your life. Did it work with this sister? Did it work with that sister? Have it worked with that sister? Where is any evidence that that attitude has worked? Look. Don't bullshit yourself. Life is too short for that. It's okay. You can bullshit me. Fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's not important. But with yourself, you got to be ruthlessly honest. Because it's your life. And the way you look and see if your stuff is right, look at your life. There is no other way. No book, no scripture, no Quran, no Bible, no Dampandada, no Gita, no Sutras, no Zenavestas. Your life is the book. Now you look and see. And if it's wisdom, then look and see. If one is living wisely, it is reflected in your life, isn't it? Well, we have no choice there. You see, we come to the absolute measurement of whether we have wisdom or not by looking at our life. So that's what I want all of us to do, not just Rob. And I'm only challenging Rob because Rob has a lot of intelligence. As you all get to know him, you'll discover that underneath that southpaw, you know he's a southpaw, right? So those of us who know southpaw styles are always a little different from those of us who are not southpaws, but that doesn't mean they can't hit, as we see on the floor. So as we go into break, I want you to really start considering these things, because we're going to be talking about these methodologies now for managing our attachment and personal relationship. I've already said that unless we develop the capacity and the ability to radiate the elan vital, this conscious directing of tender, heartfelt attention toward another human being, if we can't feed the person that we're in relationship with, you see, then we suffer because we have shut down this flow, and that person suffers. And what we have in its place is just this attachment. And this attachment is nothing but about manipulation, control, and trying to make people please you. Right? That's not the real deal. And remember, that's your only experience of happiness. Notice, consider these things. The only time you've been happy has been when those few times when somebody did something to please you. Accidentally. Your happiness has been accidental. Every now and then. Because it is based on someone pleasing you. And we have to transcend this ego gratification level in relationships. Not just with our family, across the whole spectrum, but it's certainly starting with our family, because if you can't get this right with your woman and your man, come on, you don't have a shot at getting this right with your neighbor. Who are you kidding? Who are you kidding? You got to get this thing right in your house. Let's take a break, and we'll come back at 10 after 2, and we'll continue. Emma is not